Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are about to start. We're about to start our panel discussion. And this evening we are introducing a new cohort into the MSc HRD program. And we are introducing them via this panel discussion. The process of orientation and registration and so on will continue on Thursday. So in a way, we're starting with the intellectual activity first, and the administrative activity will catch up. We wanted to introduce the new students this afternoon, but we are a little late, so we'll go right into our panel discussion. As you see, the topic for the discussion is human resource development, the elixir of business success in Jamaica. A provocative enough title. And the last elixir I had at Pokey's Bar did cause a lot of diarrhea and other things. So we will see how it goes. So we have three panelists, and the first presenter I'm going to introduce you to, but the presentations would be Mr. Henry Reid first, Mr. James Moss-Solomon second, and the night watchman would be not James Bond, but Christopher Bond. I'm going to tell you a little bit. So for everybody, I have two versions. I have the long version and the short version. So I'm going to give you the very short version. Right? And we are starting with Henry Reid. So we have known Henry for a long time because he has been a professional in HRD for many decades now. He's now the principal consultant of his own firm, principal consultant at H.L. Reid Consulting Limited, where and this I should read, their core intellectual property is the connection between the people within an organization and the organization's performance. Mr. Reid has all the appropriate academic qualifications. He's been in the field for over 30 years and has served for over 2 decades at senior leadership levels. He has had lead Caribbean-wide organizations in areas of human resource strategy, formulation, and implementation, and so on and so on. There's a long list of companies that he has worked with, both as a consultant and as an employee. So Mr. Reid is very knowledgeable and experienced in the HRD field, and we will start the provocation with his presentation. Now we have about an hour for the panelists, so that roughly we will have 15 to 20 minutes for each presentation, and I will introduce them as they are about to speak. We start with Mr. Reid, and I will also summarize with some of my own provocations before we get into the question and answer. So let's welcome Mr.
Hi, good evening. And welcome to, I guess you're probably UWI graduates, but if you're not, welcome. to this noble institution. Walking into the campus, it felt good. Professor Holton, how are you? Okay, I want to get into the presentation. When I read the objective of this evening's activities, it says we want them to begin to think about issues that will confront them on graduation and to broaden their conception about their role in helping with the regeneration of the Jamaican economy through transforming local organizations. And my role was to open the discussion about the difference between human resource development and human resource management. But the author went on to say, I think he will go on to speak about the symbiotic relationships between the two, since he did not agree with my position that HRD was more important than HRM. So, you get my drift? I begin here. And let me start by saying the whole issue of human resource engagement in organization is an evolving process. And you have entered the field at a time when it is really heating up. So in Jamaica's case, I think the topic is set, the elixir of business success in Jamaica, because we have been confronted with a lot of issues over the years. And I think that we are probably at the time when we are either going to sink or swim. But I go. The evolution of human resources, of human resource management, I'm very deliberate, started in the 18th century during the Industrial Revolution. That's one of the legacies we've had. It was thought from then that people were critical to the success of organizations. There was a view that well-being of workers led to what they termed at the time perfect work, and that without healthy workers, organizations could not survive. That's clear. In the 20th century, as part of Taylor's scientific management, and maybe you have read it or you will do that in your work, then focus on the manufacturing job types. Taylor referred to labor as an input in the manufacturing process. And this further sparked inquiry into the productivity and how labor could be enhanced. Over the period between then and now, significant evolution and change has taken place, and so at this stage, the field of human resource management is underpinned by significant theoretical work and practice in human relations, human employee motivation, organizational theory, psychology, and behavior. This gave legitimacy for the applied discipline of engagement of employees and the policies and practices as part of the management of organizations. The late 20th century workforce was facilitated by transportation, technology, and communication, and hence redefined labor as an asset of organizations rather than just an input in the production process. So we have now widened our scope as to this application. It should be noted that the scope of this work was widened to include studies in universities, work centers, among professional organizations, and included industries outside of manufacturing, including the armies. In fact, in the US Army, a lot of work was done on management, and a lot of theoretical and practical work was done in the UK, in the Soviet Union, and in Canada. In the evolution, human resource management became recognized as a branch of management with the responsibility for improving organizational performance through the application of theory and practice to the management of organizations' human capital. You see the words, how we change from just an input in production, asset, now to capital. The functions of HRM emerged to primarily be one, the acquisition of human resources, the development of human resources, hence HRD, which in that process, we talk about the framework for helping employees improve their personal and organizational skills, knowledge, competencies, attitudes, and behaviors. And on the issue of behaviors, some of them are sometimes appropriate and has led to a lot of careers being lost at different levels of organization. And it's something that requires serious input either from culture or study of psychology and so on. In fact, I think maybe we are going to be having more and more psychologists and social workers underpinning the work that we have to do. Inappropriate, and there's also some dysfunctional behaviors in the organization. Thirdly, the motivation of human resources. Fourth, the maintenance of human resources. And I added here, and this is my own, organizational development, which is the act or process or results of advancing the growth of the organization. So human resource development, in my own view, was dealing with the employee and how you fit the employee into the work scene and sometimes into the community. Organizational development was talking about building the capacity of the organization, which is a more holistic thing. Okay? I hope that you have recognized that organizational performance is the objective factor. For, in whichever branch of management you are, the rallying point of all factors of management is achieving the goal of the organization. From what I have read and observed, the tension between, and there is somewhat, the tension between HRD and HRM is in most cases a function of the organizational arrangement, especially where HRD and HRM are parallel and HRD does not report to HRM. And this is what you find in some large organizations. And based on the focus of the organization, it might be important that development be given its own track of power. Okay? And where HRD reports into HRM, that the heads of human resources, in most cases being generalists, are slow to integrate and reap consistent synergies as required in modern organizations. HRM and HRD have focused on strategic contribution for improving organizational performance and are very much connected in practice. I dare say that much of the separation, therefore, appears to be academic, where competing views highlight a tension that exists in theory, not reflected in recent research, and what we know about effective HRD and HRM in practice. And I would hasten to say that I have read a lot of blogs that talk about what happens in organizations and the tension in HRD and HRM. A lot of it lacks data, and as far as I'm concerned, much of it is not credible. And I'll come further to demonstrate why I think that we have blurred the lines. The shades of gray have pretty much dissipated. Alongside all of this, research, students and practitioners were evolving and embedding work designed to promote and advance growth and effectiveness of organization. And hence I touched on earlier organizational development. This embedded in organization the practice of measuring the contribution of organizational development and organizational effectiveness interventions. This pretty much blurred some of the lines, as I said before, of the tension between HRM and HRD. OD focuses on the continuous improvement in organizations, enhancement and development of performance, using a synergistic approach or a systems approach. So too does HRD, but sometimes with a micro focus, that of the employees. Organization effectiveness describes the effectiveness of organizations achieving planned outcomes and also measure the effectiveness of OD interventions. Together, OD and OE were used to achieve the following activities. One, organizational design and structure. Now, there was a time when this took ascendancy almost in organizations. And if you some of us were around in the 80s, when every time a company was going to let go employees, they say, oh, we're doing a restructuring. At the time, it became, I think it was overused, and even though a lot of it was necessary, because as technology and equipment and all of that, and efficiency improved, yes, you had to reduce workforce. And in the competitive nature of business, it became absolutely necessary in a lot of cases. But restructuring became a bad word. Talent management, and so the second one would be talent management, leadership development, and coaching. So if you see, there's a significant overlap here when we talk about OD and HRD. Third thing was assessments. And here now we talk about surveys. Now, this started the whole issue of the use of data in human resource management. A lot of what also became very, very important and focused was the work with culture and values in organization. Change management, process design, and improvement. So what it has done is has accentuated some of the work being done in HRD. But what it has also done is to have given a lot more credibility, so to speak, and measurability of the work being done in human resource management. As the evolution continues, organizations sought better returns on their investments. Capital lost its territorial loyalty and started roaming the world seeking better returns. The role of human capital was again in the spotlight and were required to deliver more, and in some cases became the source of competitive advantage. It seemed that shareholders just realized that the capacity of human capital to create value exceeded that of the emerging technology that they depended a lot on to deliver, the machines and finance. New environment, globalization, which started now to take root. In addition to that is the whole issue of consumer culture that changed significantly and now begin to impact the organization. That also was a motivation for a lot of the work that was happening in the evolution of human resource management. So let me pause, though, to get our feet on the ground. So all of these exciting things were happening. Some practitioners, and I want to talk about us in the Caribbean. For a lot of us, it was just a change in labels that we proudly wore in our organization, labeled as human resource manager and and those things. But we remained glorified personnel administrators. And in a lot of cases, very, very inefficiently. But we had this, we are human resource manager and we are HRD and all of those things. HRD not so much because the training remained true and those things that were done. But in human resource management, I think we had a fall off in the Caribbean. We were not keeping up somewhat. And even now, in a lot of organizations, we do some personnel management, not true? And some people in the organization send you over personnel when you misbehave. During this time, training and development delivered valuable service primarily to employees and operations. That is, operations within the organizations. And in some cases, trained for skills independently. And in Jamaica, in our training and development history, you might have, and you probably will talk about the work done in the Jamaica Industrial Development Corporation, HART now, and UDC. These, and in the government itself, it had its own school for training and development. Down at the Scotiabank headquarters, they had a floor there, and that's where they trained people for work in HRD in government service. So a lot of input was put, and it continued. The truth is that there are some organizations in the Caribbean that are quite modern. So my comment about being glorified personnel administrators does not apply either to every sector or every organization. It's some. All right? Things have changed, again, and any CEO in any self-respecting organization would wish to have one conversation about his concerns, and he's going to have it with whoever heads the HR function in the organization. You see, I take it off now, not HRM, HRD. It's the human resource. That is how, and in fact, this term came about from the media. I think the media was a little confused, and you know, when journalists are confused, they find a creative way about what is HRD and HRM. And so they just say human resources. And that took root. But from all my research, it came out of media, and I think finding ways to communicate, you know, so that we understand what it is. For us, enlightened self-interest would suggest that HR business partners, in the absence of enlightened leadership, guide our organizations toward changing the fortunes with their reach, and hence embed new cultures devoid of entitlement. That's one of the things that has impacted a lot of the work in moving organizations forward and in moving progressively the work that we do in human resource development and human resource management. Using available data to inform decision making in all aspects of the organization, creating HR strategies that are designed to deliver goals to the organizations using all resources and toolkits. And if you notice, I'm pulling it all into one body. I'm not making any distinction here. Then now we need to look to seek to understand change within and outside organizations, new technology, the pool of human resources available, and the manner in which we engage and stimulate. And engagement is a very specific word when we use it in human resource management. By now, I hope you have noticed that I have left the script of defining HRM and HRD for the purpose of determining which one is more important. We are engaged in multifaceted scenarios requiring multifaceted responses from the integrated HR toolkit. It is from the outcomes that we will determine where the real solutions emerged. Let me see the outcomes and measure them against set goals, then we will determine. That's how it's going to happen. It must also be borne in mind that not all disciplines of the HR function need be resident in-house, but may be sourced as required, stimulating the thought about what in-house HR organizations would be. And that is something that I'm sure you will debate. In most recent times, I think in the 1990s, in 1997 and so on, a guru, Dave Ulrich, got into the act, and he did a lot of work at, I think it's not Stanford, it's Harvard. I think he's a Harvard professor. And he wrote a book called The Human Resource Champions. And in that, he talked about the next agenda for adding value and delivering results. You notice? Adding value and delivering results. It's no longer about whether we're in human resource management or development. It's whether the human resource function delivers. But listen to how he put it. He describes a multifaceted approach of delivering HR services that meet the needs of both employees and employers, and position HR as a significant contributor to organizational success. Ulrich presents his approach in terms of deliverables or outcomes for which HR should be responsible. Hear them. Strategy execution, administrative efficiency, employee contribution, and the capacity for change. In the course of delivering these four areas, he describes four corresponding roles for HR that HR should play in a business. One, as a strategic partner, working to align HR with business strategy. As an administrative expert, working to improve organizational processes and deliver basic HR services. As an employee champion, listening and responding to employee needs. And lastly, as a change agent, managing change processes to increase the effectiveness of the organization. One of the important things about Ulrich's approach is that it includes the ways HR can deliver value to organization rather than shifting focus from area to area. It's about what do you deliver to the organization. Similarly, a headhunter is a HR consultant. He hires people. He describes his experience in executive search in which CEOs, and if you, in media, if you go to the McKinsey Consulting, they deliver a quarterly review. And they use they're one of the largest consultants in the world. But they use the data from their consultancy to inform their writings. And every quarter they put out huge papers on observations from industry. But listen to what he has to say, and this came out in one of the quarterlies in 2011. They want people, and this is from CEOs, they want people who will be successful business partners, strategic thinkers, and people who will understand the pressures of running an effective business in today's market. He reports that when hiring a leader for HR function, come with me, most CEOs ask for someone who is not a typical HR person, and that most of the successful candidates describe themselves that way. I am not the typical. The trend reflects the common perception that HR is business as usual. That suggests that it is not prepared to meet the challenges of business in a changing, globalized environment. So in closing, we'll talk a little bit. What of the future? The future for us is about data, data mining, and data use. Because by analyzing the links between people practices and productivity, some companies are improving their bottom line. Again, I said that there are some organizations here in the Caribbean that are doing exceedingly well in terms of the role of HR and HR's contribution to their modernization, their profitability, and their growth. But there are others who are being left behind. For at least one generation, HR executives have aspired to be strategic advisors to business leaders. But this has not happened in the main because the difficulty of measuring HR approaches. I don't know, you're here, you can, maybe in the question and answer we can share on this. This sometimes creates credibility concerns and HR not being taken seriously as a contributor to the bottom line. Some popular ones are, and what is the ROI on the training that you just did or that you're proposing to do? There are measurements that we can use and should have dealt with that, but are we doing it? What screening techniques yield the best performing results? We're doing psychometrics and we talk about it, but are we looking at the results that the organizations are getting? I had a case where I asked one recruiter, tell me a little about the psychometrics you're using. What are you looking for in the salespeople as against the customer? He says, no, we don't do that. We just do the psychometric. And so there was no input from the organization as to what you were looking for. And the other one has to do with performance management. As you might be aware, there are different techniques used in setting objectives, performance objectives. And one of the questions being asked, in fact, I was in one organization, the question was asked, out of my own ignorance, which technique do you use? Because I was introducing one. So I said, is this consistent with what you use? We said, we just write them down. So again, we have to be mindful of the things we do, and we have to begin to measure and be able to discern. I did this, what were the results? And we'll talk about how it will impact you. If we are not there yet, this is the perfect time to start. One, because the universal imperative to get more from less is been forcing executives to seek value anywhere they can find it. If it means cutting costs, if it means improving efficiency, whatever it takes. HR business partners are expected to be there with them, especially in helping them to see where they can get internal efficiencies and to make the company more successful. There's a widespread adoption of enterprise resource planning, HR information system, which has made data on business operations, performance, and personnel accessible and standardized. Now, I don't know what happens in your companies, but in a lot of cases now we're using templates for reporting. You have that? And in the templates, everybody plug in their results at the end of the month. What you will notice is that those templates are more focused on quantitative. So you can't leave the HR page blank. And we have to get ourselves to that speed where we understand that it's a common language in business, and therefore, what it is saying is that by putting what we are receiving, what we are reaping, what we are producing, we're beginning now to step up to the plate because of the standardization. But the other side of that is that we have significant amount of data that we can use now to help companies to resolve issues. And in addition, available software and data has allowed business executives to find links between talent management and labor productivity. And in the discussion, I think that will come up. The use of HR analytics. And I'm a little mindful that a lot of people associate analytics with big data. It's not true. Small companies too can use analytics. It is simply using data that drive or show patterns, and from those patterns you can come to some conclusions. The ultimate, though, is to use data to predict outcomes. It is used heavily in marketing and finance. It's also available and is being used by big companies in their HR, because that is what is driving what is happening there. All right? So we can talk about those. I have some examples which we will pick up. But if we use the data that I just spoke about, in one company in the United States, it's a medical care facility, they had a problem with turnover with their nurses. And what the HR manager did was simply to say, let's take a look at what are the issues. You'd have gone back to your exit interviews and all of those things, and they found that it was an issue of compensation. And what HR did was to use the same data to tweak to get desirable income that these nurses are looking for. And then they expanded the model to touch other areas of nursing, the people who are particularly high performers, because nobody's going to spend more to keep somebody who's not a high performer. That has helped, and at the end of it, they said it was a $100 million return in the organization. As you would imagine, recruiting, because a lot of those companies go to other countries to recruit nurses. And so it's at significant cost. So that is one way HR helps organizations to meet their goals. And it is very popular in areas of banking and healthcare and retailing, where data needs to be used. And one last one I'll mention has to do with hiring, linking hiring and performance. So the same psychometric we spoke about earlier. Sales manager has issues with some people, but he has also high productivity in some areas. HR then took that and looked at what is it that we did when we recruited these people? What were their own profiles? You use that to build up now a new profile for hiring. Again, in this case, it helped the issues, and what they found was that the new cohort of recruits were performing at 10% better in terms of sales productivity than the former cohort. And we stop here, and we can pick up in your questions. I'm sure that there are some issues that you'd like to take forward. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much, Henry. and we will continue the discussion. Just two quick comments on what has been presented. One is that when you're talking about the Jamaican environment, I think there is an expectation that life is much more turbulent and conflict-oriented. So that some of the things that we are presenting here are much nicer to theoretically lay out and so on than the reality of Jamaican organizations. So that the Jamaican organizational environment in general is a fairly chaotic one. And so at the end of your 2 years, the question would be, have you learned enough to help you to perform in that organizational environment? And when I say the Jamaican organizational environment, I'm not just talking about the within organization relationships, because organizations exist in a relationship with other organizations, so that you're dealing both with within organizations and across organization relationships. And as every Jamaican knows, one of the issues of living in Jamaican society is the problem of regulation. And the problem of regulation speaks to the nature of the organizational environment and the organizational culture that we have. So maybe later on we'll get into some of the discussions about the chaotic nature of organizational relations. And while we are talking about HRM versus HRD, the point is that there are problems to be solved, a multiple set of problems to be solved at every level, whether you're doing HRM or you're doing HRD. Our next presenter is appropriately James Moss-Solomon, and I say appropriately because his style is to confront and deal with all sorts of problems. And one of his challenges now is to deal with the chaotic organization that you call the University Hospital of the West Indies. But he has come up the ranks and he has had great experience in Jamaican organizations. He started at Grace Kennedy in 1971, and he has done everything I see in Grace Kennedy. They don't say anything about how many shares he owns, but I think that is somewhere in the profile. He has contributed much to the development of Jamaican business community through his membership in the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, where he served as president for 2 consecutive terms. He was also vice president at the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica. He was seconded to the Mona School of Business as executive in residence and so on and so forth. So he has all of the experience. He is sitting down to give his presentation, and I don't know if this is related to the fact that at one point he was an athlete. He represented Jamaica at the Commonwealth Games and Central American and Caribbean Games in swimming and water polo, and this must be said now, and he held the national record for 100 and 200 meters between 1966, that's butterfly, and 70. So it is over to the Grandmaster.
Thank you very. Are you hearing me? Good. Come up a little. I sometimes know how to use a mic. Good afternoon, evening, everyone. Yes, I know how to use a mic because I'm a musician, and I've been on for 52 years. I'm playing in a band still. That's why I'm sitting down. I'm resting. Okay? But I am in an invidious position because I've been in this whole management exercise for a very long time. Started as a management trainee. By the time I was 23 and graduated, 23 and graduated from university, everybody migrated from Jamaica. So I found myself as a big manager at the age of 23. And it has been a rough road in Jamaica, and I subscribe very much to the difficulties that have happened and why I don't always follow the crowd in terms of somebody writing a textbook in another country for another country. Because this is Jamaica, you know, and strange things happen here. It happened at the World Championship. Them say, boy, bad luck, worse than Obia. And, you know, these kind of things happen in Jamaica, and we have to deal with it. We have to manage it. The people that are here have to manage it. So I'm going to take you through a little whirlwind ride for this presentation. So at a historical context, the business relevance of people in Jamaica, 24th century, and the changes in the 20th century and the changes, the mechanisms lost to neglect, largely intellectual capital, old new thoughts for moving ahead, and a brief commentary on leadership. Let me just say right off the bat, slavery and literacy were not compatible. 1655, 1833, literacy was a minor matter, maybe. There was a call for numeracy, which in most people, numeracy is an easier skill. We can count, and even an illiterate person in Jamaica can know whether they're giving them the right change at the till. We had the abolition and apprenticeship period with employment limitations. So there was not even an early move after 1833 towards a free market system of labor management. In those days, because of the lack of the literacy, trades and industry utilize what I call apprenticeship. So you went to the master craftsman who took you in as an apprentice and taught you the work. This was largely things of hand and eye coordination, which were natural. And after that period, many of the Jamaicans opted to move to small land holdings and subsistence agriculture, which was not in keeping with what was happening elsewhere in the world at that time. So Reid mentioned the Taylor revolution of mass production in Americas in the 1920s, which transformed that country. But we have to remember that at that same time, one of the reasons for freeing slaves was the fact that labor may not have been as important as it was as we became industrialized. And there's been a lot of work, particularly in this university, a lot of work suggesting that one of the major forces which brought an end to slavery was not the goodwill of the abolitionists and those who were subscribing to it, but rather was the fact that here we had an asset which was human labor, which we were owning, which was costing us to feed, and we had machines. So we dumped the labor. So many have said that that is one strong motivation of the end of slavery. Then we came into the area in America, industrialization, mercantilism requiring literacy and computational skills. Both, as I said, were very rudimentary in this country based on the previous history. So we had convenient occupations, colonial, the civil service, largely projected on necessary things for keeping peace in the community. So the colonial empire encouraged law, medicine, and to some extent administration for the civil service, and actually did a pretty good job of producing what I think in hindsight is some of the very finest civil servants, permanent secretaries and people of that nature during that period. However, most on the other side, to balance it, many were left behind. UWI continued that mentality for quite a while. It was medicine, law, you know, the white-collar skills of the colonial masters and the inheritance of Brownings and that kind of relationship. So it continued for quite a while. So the industrial era, even with the establishment of a university, continued to pass us by while the world around us was changing. Management was not recognized here in Jamaica until the 1970s. And I can tell you that as a 1974 graduate of a university, I was among perhaps the first 20 people employed to Grace Kennedy who had a university degree, particularly in management. So we have to figure that this tertiary learning is a new feature to the workforce that you will be required to analyze, to manage, and to develop. So it is a new feature. So let's come to the 20th century. Manufacturing and industrialization in the first half of this century were largely unknown quantities. There was no product development, no branding, no marketing, no research and development. This marketplace in Jamaica was dominated by bulk unbranded products, just like we are currently trying to get rid of with this sugar, with some guy who you don't know where he's coming from, that he just reached there from a dance hall and is weighing out your sugar, and you're not even worried. It is an element of life that we have developed. Some guy come on the flower and you want the flower and the thing rather than in a hygienically packaged situation. It's a reversal of what happened there up until about 1960, where everything in a supermarket and a big shop, as we used to call it, big shop meaning the one where you don't have to ask for it through the fence, the one that you could go into and take a little basket down the aisle. Everything in those days was packaged. Grace rice come in £1 and £2. Eve rice, corned beef was packaged, flour, sugar, all of those things were hygienically packaged. And we turned on our ear, and this is what Clem was talking about, because it's a dynamic situation. We reached civility in terms of branding and packaging in the 1960s. And we have gone back to the true defense wholesale, whether it's downtown or in rural areas, and we have gone back to that as if we have no memory of a previous civilization. So this is a contention that we have to deal with in the workplace. Persons in the business were not taught that at a university, and are still not taught, but that's not peculiar to Jamaica, that's worldwide. So I came to Jamaica, having graduated from a Canadian university, to find myself in a position to manage people to make money. And McMaster University never teach bully beef nor mackerel. And we used to make a lot of money out of bully beef and mackerel and flour. And it wasn't taught in a university. So therefore, persons were required to be apprenticed for those subjects that were requirements in business that were not taught in a school. We never learn flash out, even at Harvard or Oxford. Flash out is a Jamaican phenomenon of 5-ounce mackerel, formerly known as Dirty Girl. Right? Am I right? Anybody remember that? You can say yes, you know. You know, and I can take a little, can say hallelujah too. But, so engineering and business persons who you are becoming today were the blue-collar workers of from 1900 to 1990. If you were an engineer, you were a common man in some boots in a construction yard. There was no dignity. Your parents were not happy that you were going into business or into engineering. So this is one of the contentions. So, quickly. We have constituted among ourselves 4 steps to intellectual and human loss. The lack of apprenticeship ongoing in businesses today, even when you come out of here, you will have to be apprenticed to somebody who knows HRM or HRD. Somebody who is an expert. Having a master's degree will not make you the international expert that you're hoping to be. So it is a learned process. So lack of apprenticeship leads to human failure. Secondly, human failure leads to dismissal. Dismissal leads to low future job opportunities, because if you have been fired from 3 places, you're not going to get the 4th job. And low job opportunities lead to migration. This is the reality of Jamaica that we are trying to manage people within at this 2017 year. So the sequences are, these are curative measures that you have to consider as you manage people, whether it's HRD or HRM. This is the middle of the road. To combat non-taught skills, you have to deal with apprenticeship. If you're going to deal with apprenticeship, then the appropriate people who teach apprenticeship need to be the masters. So that requires that the managers need to be teaching. I need to teach you bully beef. All right? I know it. Okay? I need to teach you that. Not send you to a school, not send you to somewhere else who don't know about bully beef to expect you to learn it. Managers teaching leads to being close to the cutting edge. The cutting edge leads to continuous improvement. Continuous improvement leads to sustainability. Sustainability leads to growth. Growth leads to profitability. Profitability leads to better pay. Better pay leads to employee retention. And employee retention means that you have a real opportunity of improving your intellectual capital retention. Because each of you, although you have the same degree, come to work bringing something in your mind that is quite unique. You are not lemmings rushing off of a cliff. You bring something unique, something you don't even recognize now that is important to the business. What I need to know as a manager. Who has read the newspaper when I step in the office at 6:30? And quite often the person is the strangest person. Who has read the newspaper? Is the messenger, because he's there from 6, got a bike ride, get him there quicker than everybody else. And he tells me what is in the newspaper that is of interest to Grace Kennedy. And I appreciate that from him. And I tell him so, and I tell him so in front of the rest of the staff and the senior management who are just getting out of the bed with a hangover and haven't read the newspaper. So, the requirements for empowering people. Leadership. I had a discussion today with someone of prominence from RGR who was doing an interview for TVJ. And they kept talking about my school and political leadership. And I'm saying to him, Norman Manley and Michael Manley went there, yes. But between Norman Manley and Michael Manley, they are leaders of the Industrial Revolution in Jamaica who have been really great leaders and produced something much more. So leadership is not about politics, and get that out of your mind. Leadership is you coming in front here and getting everybody here who is in your employ to march in the same direction cohesively and produce something efficiently. That requires transparency. That means that I must tell you what's going on. I said, listen, you see this? New product coming out next week, and I want the sales team to put your effort behind it. Can't stop at the point where you're going to tell me, Lord, they're not going to like the name Alcavida. What it mean? It's not even English, nor it is Jamaican. It not even come like water. You understand? But I have to get away to align everyone, to make it, to sell it, and to collect the money and put it in the bank. So, having understood our role, which is part of the alignment of the human factor, we have to have accountability. You have to understand, as a messenger, that I appreciate you and I want you to read the newspaper every morning at 5:30. You have to appreciate that. I must reward you accordingly for doing that. I must treat you. Reward does not mean just money. Reward means that I have to, as we say in Jamaica, big you up. Okay? Person I big up the most is a lady named Mrs. Stella Brown. She served the tea every morning when I was down there. And Miss Stella was the greatest HR manager I ever had work for me. Because if you're not feeling well this morning, Miss Stella come tell me. Said, Dorothy don't feel so good, you know. Me think the guy where she married to, he might treat her bad. So I said, Dorothy, come in the office. Are you feeling okay? And then she break down in tears. And then I say, here is a solution to your problem, Dorothy. Let's work along with that. And let's be part of the family. And let's work along with that. I'm not intruding. But that is what is necessary to keep 3,000 people heading in the same direction. That's what's required. Not a statistic. Henry, I'm going to disagree just for the point that they can tackle us on this. But you know what I'm talking about. We're not really disagreeing. But I'm saying, giving me the statistics, don't tell me that Dorothy's husband is beating her. Okay? And I need Dorothy to be unbeaten to be a part of my team. The other thing is integrity. Integrity in that you have to treat people properly. You can't be the one out there who is the leader who is being arrested every week and suspected of being a ganja farmer. Okay? You just can't do that. And caring. You have to care about people in Jamaica. We don't have the option of the American textbook writer. If I put an ad in the Wall Street Journal for MBA, in the evening edition, by tomorrow morning we have 10,000 applications. That can't happen in Jamaica. So I have to care for those that I have that are worthwhile caring for. And that's what the leadership is about. So that brings me to the end, because we don't talk about the leadership factor at any time at all. We only talk about us, brown and black people in Jamaica, trying our best to replicate the white man that used to be here in the colonial time. Now, all I'm saying to you is, remember, we must rise to progress. Mr. Late Professor Nettleford said to us, Abutu in a Benz is still Abutu. So, leadership has to have some quality, and you have to take responsibility for people. Thank you. Chris, come over.
So we say thank you to James. And I know you have questions for him. We're coming to the question and answers in a while. The night watchman is Mr. Christopher Bond, and he has over 40 years of experience in the Jamaican industrial relations arena. Again, a very contentious area. And with that experience, he has moved through the various levels of management, and he has occupied the post of Chief Human Resource Officer of Hardware and Lumber Limited since 2007. He also continues to provide services as an HR consultant to a select number of clients in a wide variety of areas, some of those industrial and employee relations, union negotiation, compensation management, policy development, and research, and strategic planning. So that's the short version. So I hand over now to Mr. Christopher Bond.
Unlike Jimmy, I'm not a musician, but I'm going to try and play the hand I've been dealt. Now, in preparing for this discussion this evening, I tried to think about what is it that I could best impart to you to make you successful? Because that is what I view my whole life as having spent in the pursuit of helping people to be successful. It is important because in making people successful, you yourself shine. If the people that you are leading are not successful, you cannot be successful. If you try to be successful at the expense of other people, that is going to be at best short term. People will find you out. So that has been my experience in life. And if there is one thing that I will tell you, it is to adopt the principle of trying to make all of those with whom you interface successful. Henry and Jimmy have talked about the need to make your business successful. No, technology don't make business successful. Stocks in the warehouse don't make business successful. It is the people who make business successful. And that is why I have spent over 40 years of my life dealing with people. Not with computers, although I've had to learn computers, but because it is the people that are the difference. I'm going to try and cram as much as possible into this period. So, looking back, the human quest. What we're trying to do is improve the quality of human life. Each of us wants to be happy. Each of us wants to achieve something. Each of us wants to achieve our potential. Each of us wants to feel appreciated, to feel valued. That is so whether you're Stella, who is the office attendant. Without the office attendant, trust me, Grace Kennedy don't run. Nor do any of the other businesses that I have. Without the messengers, the same. So every single person employed in the business is an investment in the success of that business. Every single person is important. Every single person, if you lose them, you lose the talent that that person brings to the business, and it costs more to replace talent than it does to maintain talent. You heard about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. By the way, I am a little bit of a rebel because the normal preaching is that when you're making a PowerPoint presentation, you just put bullet lines and you speak to those. Now, what I want to leave you with is something that when you look at it, you don't have to try and remember what Chris Bond said. What did he say in response to this bullet line? You can look at something, and these will be available from the department upon request. I deliberately did not make it available before because I don't want you to have read it and to walk out of here leaving without hearing what I'm telling you. Because Sometimes the messenger is as important as the message. So, what is business all about? It's to satisfy the needs of yourself and others by contributing to the human quest. It is not only materialistic or self-serving, but it can be for the benefits of others and even other species. Now, we talk about strategy and a mission for the business. If you're in a business, any single thing that you do that is not in some way linked to the mission of that business is wasted effort as far as that business is concerned. And that doesn't mean that you have to be slaving 48 hours a day. It doesn't mean that, but it means because part of the business being successful means people being engaged, means people being recognized as being whole people. Some of that is going to be indirect, some of it is going to be direct. And the way in which you measure the success of a business is against the targets that are set. These can't be airy-fairy. Jimmy talked about leadership, getting people to all understand a vision. A vision is a dream of a better place than we are now. And a true leader is able to engage his followers to make them see that same dream that he has and to make them want to follow them to that place. No matter how good a manager you are, you may not be a good leader. If you are a good leader, especially in the business sense, one of the important things that you do is make sure that you understand that the business is more important than any single individual. And that even if you are the greatest leader that there is, that the business that you've created ought to survive you. So, the whole purpose of HR is to make sure that the business achieves its mission. How do we do that? By engaging everybody so that the people feel that by doing the things that will make the business successful, they themselves will be successful. That is so for every one of us. The balanced scorecard, I mentioned that because I found that to be a very valuable tool. It's not the only tool, but it is a very valuable tool in helping people to understand what the business is all about, the role that they play in it, the targets that must be set, where you are now, what your ambition is in terms of the next 12 months, the next 5 years, measuring the steps along the way, deciding how you're going to achieve that, communicating it in a very graphical form so that people understand where they fit in. There was a time when the business strategy was something that was kept very close to the boardroom, because it was felt that if you let people below that level know what the business strategy was all about, you were giving away a competitive advantage. Now people realize that unless you engage everybody, unless everybody knows the direction the business is going in, the business is unlikely to get there. You're going to have people pulling in different directions, as I understand to our shame, happened in London recently. I say that just because there are life lessons in virtually everything that we do. So the balanced scorecard, unlike many other systems, it's not only backward looking. It doesn't just measure past performance. It looks forward. It focuses on business strategy from 4 different perspectives. And it is able to demonstrate that in picture form. Now, the 4 perspectives that you look at are from the people perspective, because if you don't get the people perspective right, nothing else is going to happen. That's why I like HR, because without people, nothing happens. Remember, I started off by saying that business is all about, in some way, improving the quality of human life. Because if you don't get people, if the business is not producing something that people value, that people say, yes, this is going to make me better, this is going to improve the quality of my life, then people are not going to support the business, whether it is a for-profit business or whether it is a not-for-profit business. Without the human aspect taken care of, none of your internal processes work. Those internal processes can be marketing, they can be the use of technology, it can be the use of other types of systems which are required to make the business successful and profitable. If the human aspect isn't working and the processes part of it isn't working, your customers are not going to be satisfied. You're going to lose your customers, the people upon whose well-being and whose financial support you need to make the business successful. You see, everything starts off from the people. The people manage the processes. processes are what are required to meet customer needs, sometimes even needs that the customers don't know they have yet. That's one of the emerging trends that we have. New business, new product management. Because there used to be a time when you could quite easily say, and let me throw this out here. What is it that they say happens, or if you keep on doing the same thing, you always have? Sorry? You keep on getting the same result, is that true? No, it's not. I'll tell you in business. Okay, let me put it this way. Look at a company like Grace Kennedy. If Grace Kennedy was operating the same way it did 95 years ago, when we came into existence on February the 14th, 1922, if we were using the same people with the same skills, the same numbers, the same technology, if we were providing the same products, do you think Grace Kennedy would have survived to be 95 years old? No. If you keep on doing things the same way you always have, you die. You become irrelevant. That is the way of the world today. So do not think, as somebody said, that having reached this point where you are perfectly qualified in HR, that you have arrived. Because it is a never-ending quest. It is a process that has to continue. One of Grace Kennedy's strategies some time ago was to change from being an elephant, which is a very powerful thing but very slow-moving, to becoming a very agile tiger, because that is what is needed to be successful in today's business world. So, in order to meet the customers' needs, you need to have the internal processes, and those can only be met with the people. And why do we meet the customers' needs? Because that is how we satisfy the needs of the stakeholders of the business. The shareholders, many businesses have shareholders. Grace Kennedy, I forget how many shareholders Grace Kennedy has. It's always been an advantage to us, and we've always made sure that as many people as possible have a financial stake in the well-being of Grace Kennedy. Not just a nice to have, not just something to get as many employees engaged as possible, but it's worked very well to avoid Grace Kennedy becoming a target for takeover by the Chinese, or the Europeans, or the Germans, or whoever, because we want Jamaica to benefit from companies like Grace Kennedy. So it's all tied together. The people thing we must get that more right than wrong, because without the people thing, the organization must fail. We are part of the organization. Everybody in the organization essentially has the same needs and wants as we do. They bleed if you cut them. They want a better quality of life for themselves and their loved ones. We all have more in common than we do that separates us. So, let's look now at the realities of the Jamaican and Caribbean, because I don't know if everybody in here is Jamaican. Is there anybody here who is not from Jamaica? Strange class. I thought it was a regional institution. Anyhow, okay. It matters not. Because remember, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give you some pointers that will help you to be successful, because Jamaica is going to be depending on you. And guess what? You are depending on you, because you are the person most responsible for your own success. So I'm trying to give you some tips as to how you can be successful and therefore help your business to be successful, help your loved ones to have the quality of life that they want. We live in a globalized world. Until the early 80s, we were a very insular country. Now, we've always had a very big foreign appetite. But for a long time, Jamaica was able to set its own rules. Company like Grace Kennedy, if Grace Kennedy wasn't doing well, we didn't have any external competition. We increased our prices if we found that we needed to improve our bottom line. And because Grace Kennedy had a good reputation for quality and for customer confidence and all that, we were able to do well. Globalization changed all that, because now our competition is not just from within Jamaica, but from outside of Jamaica as well. And this is so for virtually every company in the world. But with tremendous threats come tremendous opportunities. Grace Kennedy, under the leadership of many people, Cartel Alexander, Ralph Diaz, Jimmy Moss-Solomon, and others, took a decision very early in life that Grace Kennedy was going to be a Jamaican company, but Jamaica was going to be successful, whether the Jamaican economy was growing or not. And we have done that by setting ourselves targets for expanding globally, for earning increasing amounts of our profits overseas for the benefit of Jamaicans. So we are no longer a country that can set the rules. We are a very small fry in a very big stage. This means that we have to be as good as the people who are competing for us. Not just the people who are looking, who we are trying to compete against overseas, but the people who are looking to take over our market here. One of the things that I always say to people is that we have an insatiable foreign appetite. Virtually nothing in this room is totally Jamaican. I remember when I first said that, somebody jumped up and said, me, I am totally Jamaican. And I said, okay, what did you have for breakfast this morning? And they said, oh, I had Kellogg's cornflakes. And I said, you ever heard the phrase, you are what you eat? The argument stopped there. But I've made the point that Jamaica cannot survive by itself. We cannot set the rules are set by people bigger than us, and we have to learn how to be successful despite what those rules are. There are many examples of economies around us that are failing. The Jamaican economy has virtually remained stagnant since independence with very few blips of growth. And that is despite changes in political regimes, changes in strategies, etc. But the one thing that is now recognized, and unfortunately it's taken the people outside of Jamaica to force this on us, is that we must be fiscally disciplined. And if we want to improve the quality of our life, it cannot be at the expense of continually borrowing. We have to produce our way out. It's no longer a question of, can we keep on sharing the same size cake? That's not going to get us where we need to go. So we have to grow. You look at Venezuela. When you think of, can things get worse in Jamaica? Just look at Venezuela. Things can get very much worse. Now, there are some of us who live a very good life. And we know that there are many Jamaicans. Now, I'm ashamed when I say that I'm probably in the top 2% of the most fortunate people in Jamaica. That means that there are 98% of the Jamaican population worse than me. And over 60% of that is living below poverty level. And over 60% of that don't share the values that we think that we should share. Because that is not what that's not what life experience has taught them they need to do to survive. That is one of the most important struggles that you're going to come face to face with in being a successful HR manager. So, economic development must be defined as improving quality of life, not just for some, but for everybody in Jamaica. We're foolish if we think that we can operate in our little paradise while just outside our gates are people starving, people desperate. We have too many examples that that doesn't work. We can no longer keep certain types of people outside of our business or outside of our home lives. Now, HR in a successful business can no longer be the very reactive, very administrative personal services function that Henry spoke about. It can't be. Business operations in Jamaica have changed totally in the same way that they have all over the world. There's a time when it's senior operational managers or people being put out to pasture who were given responsibility for the HR function. Everybody thought, oh, HR is easy. Whether it's HRD or HRM, they said, oh, you don't need any special training for that. Now I tell you that people are now realizing that without an effective HR function in the business, not only will you not grow, but you're exposed to the kind of risks that can, in very short order, mean the demise of the business. This is why UWI has modules solely dedicated to providing effective HR graduates for the benefit of this country. What are we going to be faced with outside? Loss of jobs due to automation. One of the things that many businesses have tried to do is to become more productive, use technology to replace people. Now, yes, you can become more productive. I remember when Red Stripe decided that they were going to manufacture their beer for the North American market outside of Jamaica. They separated something like 50 people here in Jamaica and employed 2 additional people in North America to take advantage of excess capacity in a brewing plant up there. Yes, that made them more profitable initially, but at the cost of 50 jobs here, and behind each of those 50 jobs was another 5 people who depended on those jobs for survival. Another thing that's happened, Jamaica has some of the strongest labor laws. Trust me, we do. Whatever we might think about the policies and the politics of the past, and I'm thinking now of a gentleman called Michael Manley. One of his legacies was introducing legislation to protect Jamaican workers, to set minimum standards. The 1970s saw the birth of a lot of those legislation. And at the start of the 21st century, changes took place in certain pieces of legislation that have complicated the heck out of life for businesses. They redefined definition of worker. For example, they gave non-unionized employees, I shouldn't say they, non-unionized employees were given access to the IDT. People didn't think about the consequences of that, didn't realize it, because it sounded like a good thing, a reasonable thing. Aren't non-unionized employees entitled to the same due process that unions insist their members get? Yes, they are. We're all humans. We all want to be treated decently. But it changed the rules of the game, because it now means that for an organization to suspend or to dismiss an employee, you have to follow a very, very specific procedure, or you will pay, as one former very senior police officer said, dearly for it. Most of the cases now that go to the Industrial Disputes Tribunal and are overturned are not overturned based on the fact of whether the person actually committed the breach or not, but because the organization didn't follow the proper process in arriving at the point where they took the action. So, guess what? Still to this day, many people don't understand that, and there are many organizations in Jamaica that simply do not have the structure or the resources or the competencies to meet all of those requirements. So things have changed. We're now talking about the issue of decent work. We're losing a lot of jobs to countries that have lower standards than we do. So the question has now come up, are we going to insist on our labor legislation to try and make sure that only jobs are given where certain protection is given? Or are we going to sit by, watch jobs disappear to Mexico, to India, to the Dominican Republic, etc., where they pay much less than we do, where people can be fired at the drop of a hat, where the conditions under which they work are indecent, but where, if you measure it solely on the basis of productivity, they're far more efficient than we are. So there are those things. We're losing call centers, we're losing BPOs. People like Scotiabank, for example, they've embarked on a policy of establishing regional centers of excellence. Now, though what that means is that Scotia has functions all over the Caribbean, branches all over the Caribbean. And if they find that their IT department in Trinidad is more efficient than the one in Jamaica, or is the most efficient one in the region, they close the one in Jamaica. And all of their IT services are provided out of somewhere outside of Jamaica at the cost of Jamaican jobs. So this is a real struggle that you're going to find yourself confronting. Chronic unemployment, lack of opportunities. I mean, you hear it said that 4 out of 5 university graduates don't find employment, the kind of employment that would be considered decent employment within the first 2 years of leaving this institution, no matter how well qualified they are. Now, each of us has the responsibility for our own success. And for many people, if you can't be successful in Jamaica, you're going to be successful outside of Jamaica. You owe it to yourself, you owe it to your families. We see increasing crime and violence, and as I said, this is no longer restricted to the inner cities. Nowadays, well, about 4 weeks ago, A fairly prominent young businessman was shot in his car on Ruthven Road. I don't know the reason for that. But the fact is that nowhere in Jamaica can you pretend that you are insulated from what is happening in the worst parts of Jamaica. For many people in Jamaica, life is cheap. We have to find a way to be successful despite that. We have to find a way to improve the quality of life of people in Jamaica through business, through creating opportunities so that you don't have so many people in Jamaica feeling that the only way for them to achieve their dreams is through illegitimate means. Our own personal safety depends on it. It's no longer just a question of our own quality of life, but our own personal safety depends on it. We have a loss of critical talent. People overseas are raiding us. They know that pay rates in Jamaica are low unless you are at the top end, in which case you're paid a premium in order to keep your talents in Jamaica, because once you reach a certain level in business in Jamaica, you become very marketable outside of Jamaica too. So companies like Grace Kennedy, like Scotia, etc., pay very significant wage differentials to make sure that they have the top talent, that they're able to retain the top talent, without which they know they cannot survive in Jamaica. We have increasing industrial action. Yes, we went through some halcyon days where, because of social partnerships and increased communication between capital and labor, rate of industrial action almost disappeared. Now we're starting to see it raise its head again, because even though the unions, and let me tell you, the unions have been very aware, they are very much aware that they need to change how they operate in Jamaica, because they can no longer protect people's jobs regardless of what happens. They have to adapt or they will become irrelevant. So, despite all of those discussions, people are now being driven to the brink. We spoke about restructuring. Again, I said, if you don't adapt to changing circumstances, your business dies. So restructuring is the new norm. No business is going to stay the same for any 12-month period. You're going to lose customers. You're going to have decreased productivity, and no business leader is going to sit idly by and watch your business go down if they have any option. That's not their responsibility to their shareholders or to their staff. And sometimes some have to go for the benefit of the others. There's a greater insistence on work-life balance amongst employees in Jamaica. Gone are the days when people viewed it as a career for life. When I joined Grace Kennedy, the average career was 15 years. Now it's down to probably less than 3, because people are looking to advance more quickly than your typical annual salary adjustment, if you're lucky, is going to get you. People's financial needs keep on increasing as they become more mature. Somebody just out of university has a totally different, or out of high school has a totally lower financial, not expectation, but need than somebody in their mid-30s who now has a family, who now has children, who has mortgage responsibilities, all of those things. So there's less loyalty to the business. People move more quickly in order to meet their needs. There are gender issues. Oh boy, are there gender issues. And I can tell you that our Jamaican culture typically is very homophobic. That's what we have been indoctrinated into believing, and many of us feel very, very strongly about that. All you need to say is, I remember about 10 years ago when there was going to be a march in Halfway Tree of lesbians and gays. It didn't happen because they became very quickly aware that there were some people who were planning to attend that march with machete. So we are very homophobic, but guess what? We can no longer set our own rules without regard for what the rest of the world is demanding. We depend on the rest of the world, and they are pressuring us to become far more flexible in how we view diversity, including sexual diversity. There are far more discussions now. There was a time when unions and business didn't talk. There was a time when the unions, your typical union organizer was very uneducated, and their main competence was being a firebrand and threatening to close down the business if the business did not accede to their demands. No, your typical union organizer is very well educated as many of you are. Very articulate, very aware, and very cognizant of the fact that if the business doesn't succeed, they don't have a business. But you cannot ignore their existence because they have a legislative right to be here. They have a legislative right to know far more about what's happening in the business in the interest of their members. And it suits you more to work with them than against them. You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. You guys already know about the main pieces of Jamaica legislation. If you don't, you need to. Because you cannot operate effectively in the field of HR without being the acknowledged expert in what Jamaican law and near law requires of businesses. It's no longer a nice to have. The consequences in terms of sanctions, in terms of implications if you do a wrong decision, if you breach a law, if you breach a process. Nowadays, a mistake can be very, very costly. Over the past 4 or 5 years, the government has embarked on a program to increase the sanctions for breaching labor laws. So you need to be the acknowledged expert in this, and people will only recognize you in that light if you are sufficiently knowledgeable so that they realize you know more about it than they do. You know about the internal dispute resolutions within Jamaica? Every business, and let me tell you, there was a time when you tended to find the greatest structure in unionized categories because the unions insisted on it. And if you didn't have a structure for dealing with the unions and for dealing with disciplinary issues and grievances, etc., you were going to run into problems. With the change in the labor law, there's a little document called the Labor Relations Code. Everybody know about that? I hear silence. Everybody knows the Labor Relations Code? That used to be a guide. That is now near law. Because if you don't follow that and you are challenged because of an action that you take against an employee, there's an institution called the IDT, the Industrial Dispute Tribunal, which will overturn any decision that you take that is not consistent with the provisions of the Labor Relations Code. So you need to be very, very familiar with those requirements in a way that most of your executive leaders, most of the operational leaders don't know and don't appreciate until all of a sudden the organization is in severe crisis. You're going to find many different types of employees in the workplace. There were some studies done recently in the States, and these were by consultants looking largely at legal firms, but the thing holds true, where they were able to identify certain distinct types of employees based on the era in which those people were born and the environment in which they grew up. You've all heard about baby boomers, generation X generation, Y generation, Z. And there are very clear characteristics which generally hold true for each of those. I'm not going to go through them in detail here, because if you're really interested in this, you will ask Olivine or the department to give you copies of this, and that information will be available to you. But forget about the thing about treating everybody in the organization as if they were exactly the same. If you try to do that, you are doomed to failure. As Jimmy said, you need to know your employees. What will work in terms of pushing a button for a particular person will be exactly the wrong way to try and motivate somebody who is looking for different things based on their expectations, based on the world they grew up in, based on the technology that they're comfortable with, the technology that they are going to have to be very comfortable with in order to be successful in their world. I look at my children. They are constantly connected. At the dinner table, you see them listening to their music. They are the ones. Jimmy had Stella to tell him about everything that was happening in the Daily Gleaner. Now my 16-year-old daughter can tell me about things within 15 minutes of it happening anywhere in the world. This is what technology means to them. This is what being constantly connected means to them. Unfortunately, it's not all good technology. Too much of it is mindless entertainment. Too much of it is listening to music all the time and that sort of thing. But guess what? They need to be comfortable with it. And they're going to need to find a way to use this technology to make themselves successful in a way that those of us who grew up before technology will never really appreciate. So you have the different profiles of employees, but you need to know your employees because you need to know what's happening in their lives. They come to work as a whole person. They don't leave their personal problems at the gate of their house when they come to work in the morning. And that has a big impact on how well they're going to be able to act in the interest of the organization. It might even have a big impact, as some people have found, in terms of whether they come to work with a machine gun, particularly in the US. So you need to know your employees. You need to know that there are all different types of employees, and you need to know what approach is likely to get the best results out of them. And those approaches are likely to be very different based on who you want. Yeah. Now, to be successful and accepted as an important strategic HR business partner, there are certain things that you must do. You must be passionate about the concept of service, both internal and external. Too many times in Jamaica, we've confused service with servitude. That's a legacy from slavery days, when the slaves had a deliberate strategy to do as little as they could get away with. Many people to this day feel that, boy, they're not paying me enough, so I'm going to produce as little as I can without getting in trouble. You must be professional at all times. You must adopt the philosophy of helping others to be successful. The way to get people to trust you is for them to feel that you genuinely want them to be successful, the whole person. You must have unquestioned integrity. The most important quality that you have is not the qualifications that you have, it's whether people can trust you. Whether they can trust that when you say something, that is how it is. Whether they can trust that you have their interests at heart. You must be an effective negotiator and persuader. You must learn how to manage not just downwards, but sideways and upwards too. You must develop and own your own track record of success. Do not expect that because you have qualifications that you're automatically going to be accorded success. Life does not work like that. You must be proactive, forward-thinking, and strategic. You must be a change agent because you must lead change. You cannot be reactive and be successful. You must be, if that's the approach that you have, you will not be viewed or accepted at the table. You must be proficient in project management and teamwork. You must be extrovert. Many of us are not extrovert. I wasn't a born extrovert. I still am not. But you have to learn how to deal with people, not in a retiring way, but in a way that makes people feel that, boy, I'm glad to see you. I'm comfortable talking to you. I want to hear about your issues. Feel free to come to me to tell me your problems and I can help you resolve them. You must be visible. If people don't see you, they're going to say, if they don't understand my problems, how are they going to help me solve it? If they don't understand what's happening in the business, can't add value. You must understand the business you work in. It's not enough to be functionally competent in HR. You must understand how to read a balance sheet. You must be able to use financial language. You must be comfortable with technology. You must then understand the environment in which the business operates, the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, the threats, the customers that you serve. Because if you don't, not only will you not be able to add value, but your very co-managers will not take you seriously. Henry spoke about the need to be comfortable with technology, business intelligence, analytics, measurement systems. You must be able to not only add value, but be able to articulate and demonstrate how you are adding value. This means using data. This means measuring. This means showing the impact of what you do. You must set service standards and ensure that those are met. You must be accessible to people. You cannot live in an ivory tower and be a successful HR manager. You must become known as a problem solver. You must know how to resolve conflict and grievances, because your role is largely to make sure that the human resource element within the organization is as effective as possible. Not just that you have enough people in place, but that they are engaged and working in the best interest of the organization. You must be comfortable with fast pace of change. If you're going to be working in a unionized environment, you have to be comfortable dealing with the union. Don't look down on them, work with them, because otherwise you're going to have a very, very difficult time. As I said, you must be comfortable with diversity. Now, there's a common error that people make, and that is that they stay focused solely on the business in which they work. That's not what is going to get you where you need to go. You need to not only influence the environment within your business. Very often, if you want to be a truly successful HR practitioner, you need to be able to influence the environment outside of the business. Avoid having to constantly reinvent wheels. There are people out there who are more than willing in other businesses to share experiences with you, to help resolve problems that you may be coming across for the first time, but they have not. Corporate social responsibility, you must understand and live the whole concept of gratitude and giving back. You must, above all, be loyal to your country. Not just to your own particular business, but to the country, whether it's Jamaica, whether it's some other place in the region. Some final thoughts, and Jimmy keeps poking me and saying, watch your time. And these are not mine. This is from Sir Richard Branson. Clients don't come first. Employees come first. If you take care of your employees, they will take care of your clients. Always treat your employees exactly as you want them to treat your best customers. And I was the captain of my ship and master of my fate. I believe in myself. I believe in the hands that work, in the brains that think, and in the hearts that love. One love. Thank you.
Thanks to Christopher. He insisted that he wanted to go last, and he dropped the metaphor of the night watchman. I think this was the wrong metaphor, because he presented as an opening batsman, and it seemed that he was about to have a very long innings. But we thank him. We thank him. The next segment involves your questions and hopefully answers to those questions. Questions? Any questions?
Mr. Bond, you were speaking, well, you started to touch on the different generations there are in the world currently. And what I would have wanted to know is, how do we deal with the development of soft skills that is now lacking in the workplace? It has been a growing concern, and I've heard a lot of leaders talking about you have a lot of persons who are educated, but they're not more on the human side. So it's as if we're producing a lot of robots instead of a lot of people. So how do we combat that in the development and the management of human resources?
That's a good question. And I'll tell you, the easy answer is that you demonstrate to people that they will add more value to the business in acting in certain ways that will encourage people to do the things that the business needs them to do and to be as productive as possible, than it is to act in other ways where people feel as though they are being dealt with brusquely or not taken into account or not valued. One of the things that we all look for as people is to feel appreciated, to feel decent, to feel as though we're being considered important, and to be treated decently and fairly. I have always found that people respond far more positively to that sort of treatment than to the type of manager who considers themselves to be above it all, or you're only a janitor, I don't need to talk to you. That is not what inspires loyalty. That is not what is going to get people to follow your lead. That is not what is going to encourage people, even when they're not feeling well, to stay back or to put in the extra effort to make sure that the business and the other employees in the business are operating as successfully as possible. It's one of the reasons why you need to be persuasive, because you need to be able to articulate why it is that if there is behavior that is not conducive to the business being successful, why people need to change and what type of change can be expected.
Further questions?
Not a question, but food for thought, and on the same question that was asked. And I've oftentimes reflected on persons who study human resource management and what it is that you have to bring to the table. And more, I recognize that as somebody who gets into HR, you as a practitioner need to understand first who you are and what is it that you're going to bring to the table. I heard a discussion about understanding diversity, and more I understand as I also facilitate, lectures with human resource management persons who are coming to human resource management. It somehow becomes a struggle to understand even who you are and what is it that you're going to add to the table and how is it that you're going to actually help to engage people in some of these issues that they have. So I think first understanding who you are and opening the mind and opening the thought process is going to be very useful in also understanding and unraveling some of these issues that you have to face. And be very careful, because there are a lot of issues that, and I heard the first presenter speak about it, there are so many issues that you're going to have to face and grapple with as you go into the future.
Another comment that I'd like to make on the same subject. People are more and more realizing the importance of employee engagement. And many companies now do periodic polls of their staff to find out the extent to which people feel engaged. Now, this will provide you with information on how people view their organization, whether it cares about them, whether it's provided challenging work, whether they feel inspired to be as productive as possible, whether they would recommend the business to their friends, a lot of things like that. Now, two comments on this. First of all, I've seen too many cases where people do those sorts of employee engagement surveys and then do nothing with the results. Employees very quickly lose faith in that type of approach. And the next time that you do it, they're going to say, listen, we're not even going to bother participate because we gave you feedback before, nothing happened. That's one thing. The second thing is that very often those sorts of surveys are used to provide information to managers in terms of how they are viewed. And they are often able to be linked using the sort of data analytics that Henry spoke about to productivity of employees, to retention of employees, to those sorts of things. So again, you have to provide a reason that you can articulate why, if there's antisocial behavior taking place among certain managers, why it is in their interest and not in the organization for it to change.
There are some basic questions that you're not asking. They're practical questions, and you don't want to ask them. But let me tell you something. You have to know who can do what. You have to know who can do what in your organization. I had a check for $5 million US coming while I was working at Grace Kennedy. Got on my desk at 5 o'clock. I called the financial controller at the time and I said, hey, just get this lodge for me because we can't lose interest on $5 million over a weekend. Correct? Oh, sir, the bank is closed. A master's degree and all that, Oh, sir, the bank. I said, well, just call the bank manager and tell him we're going to get the check over there, must lodge it in the account for you. You don't know the bank manager. So what do? I say, Marlon, come here. Marlon is the messenger. I say, Marlon, go lodge this check over at Scotiabank for me. 5 minutes later, Marlon come back with the receipt. Him know the guard. Him know the teller who's looking out there and say, hi, Marlon. You understand me? And man, I lodge a check and I'm saying, what do I need the financial controller for, really? I start to raise a doubt in my own mind. 90% of the calls that I get on this are people still calling about Grace Kennedy, still calling to find out from me how to get in touch with somebody, including HR calling me to say, how can I get a quick visa at the U.S. Embassy? I said, by when the ambassador invite you to a cocktail party and the embassy having a thing, don't tell me I'm going to go sit down and drink another beer with Clem. Go to the party and mingle and know people and record the number in your phone that you can speak to people. 11:30 last night, a well-known Jamaican in the diaspora is calling me because somebody's sick and need a blood transfusion at the hospital. Them call me. Why me? I want to look like a doctor. So you understand, if you are in human resources, deal with humans. They are not a number. This lady is not a number. This guy is not a number. Why not reverse this thought that is telling you that at 4:30 everybody is all right, and when somebody takes sick in your organization, you're calling me to get an emergency bed for them in ICU? Why? Well, that's what make me used to get more pay than you. As simple as that. And if it's that you're interested in, then you got to do the things that allow you to be the person who makes things happen. And if you're going to be just behind your computer from 8 till 4:30, then that is a job that can be easily replaced. In fact, soon they will build a robot to do that. I won't need you. And I'm saying, no matter what happens in the world, people need people. Whether people are customers, they're your fellow employees, they're your suppliers, they are whatever it is in the world, people need to interact in order to make things happen. You can't sit down and not go out and know who you're dealing with or give them the services that they want because you don't know the critical time when that will save your business or not.
Any follow-up questions?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening. Yes, Mr. Moss-Solomon, this is your question. You were speaking about apprenticeship and the fact that there is not very good practice in Jamaica as it relates to that. What are some practical applications that we can make within our organizations to make this more proactive and, save our organizations?
The first thing is a realization that I know you come from a university here and you don't know the first thing about the bully beef. And we make a hell of a lot of money out of bully beef. Right? And all the lecturers up here don't know nothing about it either. Not even if they have a PhD. So I know from you come there, I size you up and say, boy, you're a bright guy. You give me an indication that you want to learn. So let me teach you bully beef and mackerel so that I have a successor lining up. Because if I don't teach you that, you will have learned nothing about the business you're going in at. So you have on a VM shirt. And before when you came to a university here, you knew anything about finance and working in a financial institution? So how are you going to learn if I don't teach you? If I don't take you as what we say in Jamaica as a apprentice and give you the ropes, how will you ever know? Because we live in a different environment to the United States where things run by road. When the government of the United States said they're going to give you a reply in 7 days, it happened. You send your customs broker and you're supposed to clear next day. The next thing is you find yourself in a cascas on one of the talk shows saying, oh, them not clearing the thing, like happening this morning, happening all of last week. We're supposed to get your containers. The truckers are going on strike because they're taking too long on the wharf. No. That is when you send for somebody who know the ropes. I say, Chris, call either the trucking people and find out what the real problem is. Chris Doneman, maybe I don't know him, but I know Chris. So that is an area of connection. I said, Chris, I have 15 trucks on the wharf and they can't come off. Phone somebody on the wharf and tell them I want my truck off. No. And Chris get it done. I said, right, Chris, your bonus just go up. Got 15 trucks waiting on containers on the wharf. It's a horrific expense. So he's solving a problem, but he's solving it by utilizing a network that he has taken some time to build up in his particular area of responsibility. So he's my go-to man. But his job description doesn't say anything, as the head of HR about clearing trucks off the wharf. But him know every union person in Jamaica. So I have to utilize him for his talent. Because he didn't get that talent coming out of a university where he has graduated with some high things in French. But him have the knack. He has the knack for getting around people. Maybe he's 007 for true. And I have to play him that way. I not play him as a right back. If him is an outside right, I have to play him as an outside right. He's part of the team. And I must know where he fits in to be most effective. And that effectiveness is being willing to help me or other people who come to him in an internal situation that deals with some people outside. How does he play his part on the team in getting success? And poor Lasco have to wait 3 days.
May I?
Sure.
May I just add a little bit on the issue of apprenticeship? Maybe now in organizations we refer to coaching, but there are two connections that we need to make. One of them has to do with the leadership role. It was you, Jimmy, who spoke about leadership. And there's a thing in organizations we call performance management, which is a tool that leaders use in the organization to get the best out of it. It's a leadership tool, not being recognized and used that way, but it's the first thing. A lot of times we get people new coming into the organization, and they are put on what we call probation. At the end of the probation period, we say, well, you're fit or you're not fit, and you're X from the organization. Or sometimes you're told you're not good enough, but we'll give you more time to get good enough. But whether it's that or further in the process, there's always the opportunity to have people assigned to experts in the field. And as Mr. Moss-Solomon has put it, so if in human resources you have somebody in your area who is not good at analyzing the outcomes of performance management, you assign that person to someone who will guide and coach. Because we use that term probably more now than apprenticeship usually is a formally recognized process through which you put people through processes and you train them and test them and so on. And it has worked for us, especially in the early age of industrial, well, when we had more factories and that kind of stuff. It was more associated there. And it worked, and there was a lot of resources put behind it. As much as it is not as formal now, though, organizations are finding ways to assign people to, I'm going to call them experts, who can guide them through in a structured way. And those of us in HR are to help managers to structure that process where you ensure that they get the right coaching, they understand the processes correctly and are able to apply them. Because that is one way of enhancing people's growth and development in the organization. So however you do it, whatever it is, I think Jimmy's talking about a more informal one. But it works, and sometimes the informal is what hits the spot. So it's a matter of applying it, looking at where people need to go, how you can help to get them there. And do it. That's my take on it.
I'd just like to ask, first of all, endorse the importance of the people factor to the success of the organization. My question to Mr. Bond and Mr. Moss-Solomon, there is a statement that people leave supervisors and not companies. How do you respond to that? People leave managers and supervisors and not companies.
As I indicated earlier, each of us wants to be successful. One of the most important relationships for employees is the relationship between themselves and their immediate boss. They look to their immediate boss for a lot of things, mostly for what I call coaching for success. Now, where they feel that they're relating with people who don't have a vested interest in their success, yes, they are more likely given an option to go somewhere where they feel that they are more likely to be helped to be successful. And that is so whether it is because of the characteristics or lack thereof of their immediate boss, or whether it is because they feel that the organizational environment does not provide them with the best opportunity for success. I agree that most people do place a very high value on that relationship with their immediate boss because it's a symbiotic relationship. The boss can't be successful unless they are successful, and they can't be successful without the support of the boss. There's not always a direct line of sight. There may be a number of other factors that come into play, but it is an incredibly important relationship that between an employee and their immediate supervisor.
Jackie, you know me, I'm going to be blunt, right? If I was the king of the world, I would ban the word supervisor from Jamaica's dictionary. Jamaica is a country that since slavery has learned to use certain words in an opposite or disparate way to the English language, although it sounds like an English word. So when I tell you soon come, you're not waiting on me, Jackie. When I tell a German, he will be out there till 2 a.m. standing up outside. Soon come is 2 English words. Supervisor in Jamaica that I have observed on construction site, in business, in every place, is someone who feels they are not empowered to take a decision because I don't call them the manager, and they don't take part in the work because they're not a worker. They are a watcher. And they don't even feel that there's a need to report it because them say, that guy then doing work. Me can't fire him. Me are not the manager. But me just watch him now do no work. You know that long time, 4 years he might work with me. But he doesn't fire him. Doesn't reprimand him. Does not encourage him. Just watch. There's a comic character in DC Comics that was there in the universe too. Takes no part in the running of the universe or anything, but him just watch everywhere. Like a supreme being, he doesn't make good or bad happen or anything happen at all. Him just watch. Sit down on a planet on the page of a DC comic and watch when Superman pass and when this one pass. Don't know nothing about it, although he's all powerful. So this is a problem we have in Jamaica. I like to suggest to people that we call people different names that represent the team. So like when I teach at high-low or somewhere like that, I'm teaching them positions. You know, I teach you how to be a right back. Because the right back, you know, must stop all the opponent ball from going. If you are going to be a sales rep or you're going to be something else, I have to find a name for you which brings the importance of it. Because I can't be expecting that because we lost the match. We lost one love. That is the right back fault because the center forward never scored any goal. And that's why we lost. The goalie won't beat the goalie. So I have to say, well, listen, man, you should have been in a better position. But then I can't reprimand the goalie only when the center forward was out there to score 5 goals, didn't score any. So I have to think about these things out of the box, because Jamaica is a place not confined to a box. Jamaica is the only country in the world where people will draw a knife over a game of dominoes. So this is what we are contending with in our workplace, you know. People come there with all kinds of problems from work these days. Entire population has been going to school. Some are doing better than others. But they're all, not because you have a master's degree, does it mean that you have a free-thinking mind, you know. That doesn't say anything about what you're thinking about, what you are doing. And therefore, these are things we have to be sensitive to in business. And that, to me, is not the job of a manager. That is the job of a leader. And I concur with the distinction between management and leader. Or at very best, the management is doing what a foreign supervisor does. But it don't work. Supervisor is not a word to be used in Jamaica.
Thank you. And for Mr. Bond, you spoke about the employee satisfaction survey. In your practice, is there a standard in terms of the frequency that you would recommend that these be carried out?
I can tell you what I have seen in practice. When what were then called employee satisfaction surveys were then started, it was conceived that this should be done on an annual basis. Now, that has changed to every 2 years because, one, many of the strategies that came out or that were devised in order to counter negative feedback from employees took some time to be agreed on and to implement and to take root. Secondly, something done too frequently starts to lose interest. So we were running into administrative problems. We were running into problems of not being able to deliver on our promise to address issues that employees brought forward as irritants. So annually becomes too frequent. Every 2 years, we're still looking at that because, again, there are some things that take some time in order to be able to be developed, implemented, and bring about a desired change sufficient for people to recognize that a change has taken place. So at the moment, I would certainly say not more frequently than every 2 years. The important thing also is that when employees give you feedback, you have to find a way to make them see that you are not only taking on board what they have said, but you are honestly making your best effort to try and deal with what they have said. Because nothing will make you lose credibility faster than asking people what is bothering you. They tell you what is bothering you, and then nothing happens. So at the moment, I would say not more frequently than every 2 years, but not so far apart that you are not able to identify cause and effect in terms of the strategies that you are using in response to the employee feedback.
Chris, let me follow up on that one, right? Because that employee survey thing, you know, I sit on many boards. I ask some really rough and pointed questions, you know. Because last time, because we want to reduce everything to a number, people to number, the management come and report to me, yes, man. Oh, 2 years ago, the employee satisfaction was 6.4. And this year, it is 6.7. So I said to them, well, I don't say it to myself, because I'm quite public, say, what the rot did that mean? What does that mean? Tell me, how do I get a measure of it that is not just a number, that is some number. How do I know that employee dissatisfaction is not because this lady is losing her house, and this lady son is smoking ganja, and they're unhappy? It doesn't tell me that. And I'm just saying, at the board level, I am insisting that I get not a numerical analysis. I want qualitative data about the health and wealth and feelings of the employees to come to the board. And because I'm quite forceful, it is happening. So we're not asking you for 6.2 and 6, and they say, yes, I've made my QOs and this is okay, and the bonus have to be big. I'm not buying that at all. Reality.
Thank you. I'd just like to add a little bit. Because they...
Just before we have your intervention, just let me say that we have 9 o'clock as a cutoff point, and that means we will have a vote of thanks about 5 minutes to 9, and the housekeeping, we are pushing back to Thursday, and we'll deal with those matters. So we have another 15 minutes that we can engage in the discussion. Henry?
Thank you. Yes, it's one of those things that organizations seek to measure because it focuses usually on the feel-good factor in the organization. Is this a company I like to work for? Will I recommend it to my friends? And, you know, all of those nice things. But then it started to become a little wobbly because you do it this year and you have not, so somebody said we are unhappy with supervision or leadership or the way you treat us, whatever it is. That gives you an opportunity to fix it. And organizations sometimes do not get to it fast enough, and it becomes futile to go and run another survey next year, and the same thing is going to return to you. What has been happening in organizations, and I know in Jamaica it has been, is that you not only measure the feel-good factor, but you also now seek to measure the alignment between what the company is doing in strategy and where employees are, how aligned they are. So we talk about the engagement. And I think that is what you get the 7.1. Because it tells you, they just use a number to tell you how aligned people are. So you're going to move this hospital into a baby-friendly hospital. That's a strategy or an objective. What is the strategy? And people don't understand we're going to make it baby-friendly so people can come in with the picnic, you can feed them from the breast, and you can get a, you know, all of those little things are happening. So the engagement measures the alignment between where the employee is and where the company is going. And usually, boards want to see how engaged people are. Because if people are not engaged with strategy, they're not going to succeed. Huh? So that is part of the measure. So it has evolved somewhat into a two-factor thing. The feel-good piece, but also how aligned we are, the employees are with strategy. Because that's where now you begin to get a measure of success of the performance of the business. Thank you.
Chris, you had mentioned the balanced scorecard, with which I helped to implement twice in our organization, 1996, and again, 2002, because it was losing its effect. No. I found a flaw, and I had to go outside and write an addendum to the balanced scorecard, which I copyrighted. But the question is, for those who wish to be aloof, the balanced scorecards in the financial outcome tends to have too great a weight. It speaks in the literature of the balanced scorecard to financial being a result of the other three. But if I'm a hotshot CEO and I, have my nice Versace suit and thing, why the hell am I worrying about the other three as long as I'm producing the financial results? So I found it was necessary to look in the organization and see how we're going to deal with that. So I took out the financial and inserted a part that deals with intellectual capital and responsibility of what you bring to work. I looked at an organization and I said, the buck stops, some buck stops with each person. Okay? The messenger is responsible for getting the mail delivered on time.
What about lodging the checks?
What is that? What is that? What? Lodging the checks. Well, that was a bonus for him because the guy who should have been knowing that didn't know it. So I said, well, it could be quite okay eventually if we part company. No great loss. I have Marlon. So, but on a serious note, though, it's something stops somewhere. The job of making the data entry, accounting thing, debit and credit in the accounts payable rests with one person. There is a person who, God knows, they call a supervisor, whose job is not to make the entries, but to see that the entries are correctly made. And that box stops there. So if Chris to make the entry, and he make it wrong, he has a responsibility. But me, who is supposed to be the buck where it stopped, have to stop that incorrect thing before it reach the head accountant. If you look at it that way, you're able to reward people for the things that they do well, rather than always have to stick out to beat them. I'm not into the beating business. I like to say, boy, Chris, not one wrong entry in the whole year. Congrats, and the rest of the staff will applaud Chris and say, wow, Chris is a good guy. He feels good. Maybe I haven't even paid him $1 more, but he feels good. And this is what the organization is about. We cannot just take a system from another country where they don't have labor relations law. When I say to you, you're fired in America, you don't get no redundancy. You're not entitled to any. And those things like that. So we have to find novel ways about what it is that excite people. Jamaica is not so hard to figure out. It's tough now for Grace Kennedy. They speak 14 languages in our Toronto office. Okay? We have customers that speak 14 or 15 different languages. So we have to talk the language. So to just say, well, I'm a Jamaican and beat my chest and say, I know both English and Patois, don't help me with the Korean customers. So there's a reality that you're going into, which is spreading the base of who you are doing business with. It's embarrassing. Try it for me. I'm a man phone switchboards all the time. Some big companies that just put out some kind of big annual report, and we have a thing on RJR and TVJ, everybody was there. And we're saying this, and they come on the nightly news with a sound bite, the phone there, that's saying, we have now expanded our business into Central America. The phone, the switchboard. Hi. Good morning. This is so-and-so company. I said, buenos días, ¿cómo está? What do I get from that? The mission is not understood throughout the organization. Am I correct? I do it every day. For those of you who are knowing here who have your private number, I'm not calling a private number because I'm doing a favor. I'm doing a survey for you for free as to whether they have a good switchboard or not. Because most of them have switchboard that is saying, if you want to speak to Pauline, press 1. If you want to speak to Alan, press 2. If you want, and if you don't know how to spell them name, please press 0. Wasting my time. It is wasting my time. And at the price I would like to bill my time at, it would be very costly for me to call you I'm not cheap. I may be free, but not cheap.
We have another question on the floor.
Good evening, everyone. Not a question. I'm just here to show off a little. This orientation here is for cohort number 20. I am from cohort number 1. So, just to say that Olivine sent an invitation to the alumni, and it's very important that we come to help you to understand. When we started the program, all these whole heap of options and so that I see you have now, we never had. But we were here with a purpose to learn. And we intended to go back into the workplace to make a difference. So I don't want you to come because HR is the easiest masters to get. It is not. Now, if you listen to the 3 panelists, the role of an HR practitioner in the evolving environment is far more difficult now than it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. For me to recruit now is a pain because they come with university degrees, but they don't even know how to sit properly. Home values, the structure of the home is down. So you find the whole issue of coaching, the whole issue of apprenticeship. So you as an HR practitioner, you really do need to know yourself. And in your department, you need to have, if you are not an extrovert, you have to ensure that you employ extroverts. Okay? I've had my CEO dress up as Superman, and we're having staff awards who want to be different. And I get a lot of cussing, but they're putting on the outfit and they're coming, and the staff have a good time. You have to be influential, and you have to lead by example. So I thought it was important that I came here as cohort 1 to say that you have chosen the best possible master's degree. And I'm expecting that when I see you before you graduate and after you graduate, I can feel proud that you are in fact an HR practitioner who is making a difference in your organization and doing the profession proud. So put your head to the wheel. It's not about the GPA that you get. It's about the ability to learn and apply. You have to graduate, yes. But when you come to me to be interviewed, I'm looking at who you are and the value that you bring to my organization, not the fact that you have a master's degree. So, Mr. Branche, panelists, thank you.
I'm just going to be the follow fashion monkey, right? Hi, everyone. So I'm what, 12, 10, 12? Yeah, about that, right? So I'm from cohort 12, and wow. Yeah, I don't know if it's about wow. It was amazing. I sat here, and I love the way that everything has been merged and all the pieces coming together. And when you hear about caring, this is where you're supposed to start to learn how to care for each other. Because I think one of the things that's going to take you through this program, and I'm just going to leave the mic alone, right? I'm not going to preach or anything, right? But I think one of the things that's going to help you is when you care for each other, you all can graduate from this program program with all leaving with 4 point what, 5 point whatever, shoot the GPA out of the sky, whatever it is. And it means then that you can give up yourself, share, and recognize that no one in here knows everything, no one in here will know everything. And I think one of the biggest things that we can get from our panelists is that the textbooks aren't supposed to be your only source of knowledge. Each person coming in from different organizations, you have different experiences, you have different ways that you have been solving your problems collectively. When you merge all of those, you're going to have light bulbs going off in your head about how you're going to take what's in the textbook and apply it to your current situation and just make it awesome. So I can just say it's really a great program to do, right? And you're going to learn so much. But please do not miss out also on the opportunity where you can forge friendships. Don't miss out on the opportunity to grow into who you can become. Don't miss out on the opportunity to get stuck that you're here to get this piece of paper, as some people say, and you forget that at the end of it, you'll just blossom, you'll just bloom, and that when you go into your organization, the person who you have become while doing the program is the person who is going to show up. And you have to make that just a collective effort where everyone is contributing to who you are. All right, and just have fun. Yeah.
Okay, we have a final question from, well, not quite.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So considering everything that has been, presented and said so far, and, even following from the advice from persons from previous cohorts, we as HR practitioners, we will have the responsibility, and we'll have the responsibility of taking care of the human capital within the organization. But we ourselves are a part of the human capital, and sometimes I feel as if we almost get left behind. What are some of the things we can do to ensure that as a part of the human capital and as HR practitioners, we are not left behind in the total mix of things? Anyone can answer.
My way. I don't know that there's any, well, you're going to find a lot of reading on that. I think the critical thing is which environment you're in, because the question of context is very important. So are you in, say, for instance, the banking industry in Jamaica, or are you in the public service, where you are? Well, a couple of things I think run through, and Chris touched on some of them. There are some personal characteristics about being credible, that, what I say is what I will do, what I promise I will deliver on. Then there's the mastery of what you do. You don't have to know everything, but you must have that willingness and appetite to learn quickly, and grow and create value in your organization. But I think at the end of the day, the big issue is that how do I help my organization to deliver the goals? Let me say something. Every person who gets hired to an organization is hired to help that person meet its objectives. That's the only reason. Chris talked about all the things that we personally want to achieve. These are personal goals. Grace Kennedy has specific organizations, specific objectives, and they set strategies to achieve them. And the people in that organization are the ones who deliver those. Because the people are the ones who manipulate, that's a very deliberate word, or exploit the technology, the machines, the processes, the systems, and all of those things. So in truth and fact, the human resource in that organization is what optimizes all of those things to get the goals. So the critical one is how goal-focused you are as a HR professional. That's there are a lot of things, and I'm not here to reel out 15, 20 things. I think there are some critical strategic things that we have to be masters of. One is you. You must be known for someone who delivers, but delivers aligned with the goals and direction of the organization. Let me give you an example. It was the company, and one of the things we found was that we were selling a lot. Salesmen were just churning out products. But when we checked the market, the data was showing that customers were not satisfied with the service they were getting. So you come in and you want to offload the product and you want to move. You don't help to look at the merchandising and all of those things and help the customer with what to do to move the product fast enough. So as a board, we said, okay, if we can keep sales where it is, but let us build now on customer relations. Having gone to my HR team and say, well, this is a new direction, it's a strategy, the compensation manager comes up and says, this year we're introducing a new incentive that is going to blow your compensation X percentage above last year if you sell X, Y, Z more. Now, you can realize that that person's job would have been on the line. Because here it is that the organization wants to build loyalty with customers, but here's somebody, a HR practitioner, who is coming to tell the employees that if you sell more, which is you're going to get more products out there, but you're going to be driving your customers away, and that's where the competition gets to creep in. So we have to be aligned with strategy. All right, so I'll leave it right there. I think those things are some of the things.
Yes, I'll give Grace the opportunity. Since we have somebody from the first cohort, and Grace is from the cohort before that.
Okay, Clem. Okay, what he's trying to tell you is that I've been here before the 20 years with the program. So I've seen it all, and welcome to this cohort. My question is open to the panel. And I found it very interesting that you dwelt on skills and apprenticeship. Many, many years ago in another land, I was the conceptualizer of a cooperative education program, which was highly successful in allowing an organization to be able to have the cream of the crop as employees when students graduated. My question to you, therefore, is that Jamaica does not have much of this. What do you think about cooperative education, and what do you think Jamaica should do about it in terms of allowing us to now have apprenticeship, in which skills are built, employees have an opportunity to develop, employers have an opportunity to groom the type of employees that their organizations want.
Okay. When you speak about cooperative education, you're referring to education in what? Okay,
the particular program that I was involved with, but there are many models, allowed a student at different levels, even from high school, to go into an organization for a semester, or as we call it, a term each year. In the case of the tertiary level, it was within the first 3 years. So you went to the organization every semester for a semester. In some cases, you were paid. In some cases, you were not. In most cases, in the first year, in the first semester, you were not necessarily paid because you had to then begin to show some value or worth to the organization. Okay. And you were paid not necessarily at the regular rate, but you were paid. And at the end of the time, of course, every year there was a report. Every semester there must be a very structured report back to the organization, etc. But it became a partnership, and it also allowed people to afford to go to school as well, but it gave the employees, the employer, a lot of value in getting the cream of the crop.
Okay, I got it. All right, for what I know, this happens maybe not in a wide and celebrated scale, but it happens. I know in secondary schools, they have sixth form students who go, or even fifth form students who go into some organization and learn some skills, some things. But I know at this university, for instance, a lot of the professional programs in social science, for instance, have people not apprenticed, but part of their, well, internship is one, but even in the intramural stage, first year, second year, they're going to school to get practice. They work with professionals and they are graded and they do things. I know the one that I'm very familiar with is, for instance, social work, where they go into organizations and communities and practice what they learn and practical. Thank you.
So there's a difference.
Yeah, but also, I know the Heart Trust, for instance, they assign students to organizations. NYS, yes. So it happens, maybe not in a very cohesive way. Maybe the goals are not well spelled out, but I know it happens. I have encountered them in organizations. And for instance, I know in any organization I work and they come in, we usually look at them to see what's the potential for hiring. And so, again, but I don't know whether it's something that, say, the private sector or the government itself, and maybe government can take it up. I don't know how the private sector, because part of the thing with apprenticeship is that the labor market has changed significantly. And it was nicely put. I like the way you put it, Mr. Moss-Solomon, where he spoke about the post-slavery coming out, and he made a case for apprenticeship. But the labor market has changed. I think you said that 4 or 5 university graduates don't necessarily get the kind of work that they want. So we have, in aspects of the labor market, a lot of qualified or trained or educated. I'm using terms that we can select based on where people are. Select talent that can't fit into some aspects of the labor force. And so organizations see that are going to say, why am I investing training dollar or apprenticeship dollar where I can pick up qualified people at the cost of people not so qualified?
So you're saying it should be a political decision as well?
You see, I think we more rely on the state to absorb some of those costs. Organizations are so now focused on profitability or growth and building things, and the cost of doing business is sometimes very prohibitive. And if they can't see the direct connection to the bottom line, I don't know that I would hold out a promise that it would get, across the board support. That is my view of it. Maybe.
Having had nothing but high school graduates to work with from 1922, when Grace Kennedy was founded, up until the very late 70s, we had to do something different, because at that time, we thought, wow, we have some people here managing companies that have never had any formal training. We had like 71 or 75 companies in 1990. So what we did, we set up the chair here, the Carlton Alexander chair, in management, brought down for the post Professor Gordon Shirley. But we ran an internal, I like to call it, this wasn't called that, it's an internal MBA program we ran. But here's how it fit the strategy. We brought into this pseudo MBA program managers from across the group. So we built, by having evening classes or day classes, sometimes with a half-day release or something, we built a network. We built a network so that the guy who is over at port services knows the person, and the lady who is over at the food side who knows the person who is up at financial services, etc. And by and large, that removed the pressure from us now. They built their own network. So they call their own colleagues who they have been to school with, just like the old school tie. JC boy called JC boy, and KC has it down to a fine art, but we built that within the company because what we thought is that our managers who have risen to being the GM of various companies certainly have acquired the practical skills. They have not acquired maybe the theory behind what they're doing is right, but they could network and it worked handsomely for us. They stopped it because we had some new ideas and, you know, somebody said, oh, let's not run that again. Let us get this one from that one and this one from here and let them lecture on this, and they don't know anything about our business. So what I'm finding now is that I'm hearing just this last year or two, they're putting that program back together.
Okay. So you advocate that it's something that should probably be replicated or given more importance?
If you have a company whose philosophy is take what is good for Jamaica and make it good for Grace, it suddenly dawns on our minds that we wait on nothing. We wait on not who is the Prime Minister, who is the Minister of this, whether it's Christmas, New Year, Valentine, or anything. If we have a job to do, and it is the right thing to do, we'll go ahead and do it regardless. So we're not saying we're like the rest. This makes a differential between ourselves and the way our strategy operates to others who are saying, why not doing until them remove bureaucracy in government? We've been operating 95 years with bureaucracy in government, so what the hell is another year? Why do we pause? Pass the baton and run.
Thank you.
And don't pull up. And don't pull up. Yeah, as you know. No? Lose connection.
And to the members in the audience, and I will hand over to have a more formal thank you by a member of the incoming cohort.
All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Rennie, and I will be a part of this cohort. And tonight, we formally say thank you to everybody for this 3-course meal that we've been fed. We call it a 3-course meal because we have been given a facility to be housed in. So we thank the Social Welfare Training Center for having us here. We also thank the persons from MITS who are here. So that is Mr. Andre Forbes' team for being here so that we can have this session videoed, so we can look back on it to see what we have missed for the things we didn't get on paper, so we can always remember them. We also say thank you to all our presenters. We say thank you to you, Mr. Henry Reid, Mr. Bond, and Mr. Moss-Solomon, for coming here and properly giving us or enticing our appetite for what is to come so that we can learn or have a practical expectation of how to tackle things as either developers of human resources or managers of human resources. So we thank you for everything, the history coming in, how we evolved over time, for stuff like how we move from apprenticeship to coaching to what is now called succession planning in a more informal type. But we look on how things evolve and how we network properly to make things better. Because the thing that we have always noticed is that people run the world, no matter how much machines we have. When I leave a company, I leave with history that you don't necessarily know. So even when I'm not there, people still need me or they consult. That's how a lot of persons are capped consultants for a particular company, because for my company, my IT manager migrated. And we still have to consult him because the things that he learned about the system is not things he necessarily know in a book. You learn these things and we understand that persons individually, they bring their own talent, and that is why it is always a great thing to retain culture, to retain people more than to retrain, because you have somebody working who has built even 40 years of service. It's not the service that they build, but it's what they have learned over these 40 years and how they have moved along with it. And we understand everything that you have given us, and we say thanks for that. Thanks for enlightening us for everything. We thank our caterers who are outside somewhere. They are Mace Catering. We thank you, our lecturers, our facilitators who are here. I see Mr. Branche. Miss Thomas is at the back. For those who don't know, that's the person behind the emails. She's there in the red. Miss Thomas, say hi. So she is here, and we give thank you for everything that, for everybody who are here. We also thank you for coming out, because the session wouldn't have been a session if they had nobody to talk to. So with that being said, I'm going to ask Miss Alicia to come and give Mr. Reid a token of our appreciation for being here.
On behalf of the HRD Graduate Programs Unit and members in attendance, we would like to thank you for coming here to share your valuable insights based on your years of experience and expertise. And we certainly appreciate it, and we'll take all of what you say with us throughout the program and beyond. We know that data usage and mining is the future, but human capital is superior. We thank you.
Thank you so very much.
We would like Miss Kadian, if she's here, to come and give Mr. Moss-Solomon his token of appreciation.
The experiencer that you share is priceless. Thank you very much.
And to bring personal thanks to our next presenter, Mr. Christopher Bond, I am asking Mr. Joseph Robinson to come and hand over his token of appreciation. So thank you for everybody who came out. And Mr. Branche, I'm taking over your little service. Remember that we have a follow-up to this on Thursday. So we're asking that everybody come out early so that we can get as much out of the sessions as possible. All right?